All right, 4 o'clock, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Misty, would you call the roll, please?
Al Glanville.
Here.
J.R. Huddleston.
Here.
Deborah Johnston. Bill Lukens.
Here.
Travis Orbach. Larry Pratt.
Here.
Gary Telkamp.
Here.
Linda Varvel.
I think I'm here.
Thank you.
Would you join me in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our usual reminder, council, if you have a conflict of interest, please let council know before you vote on anything. Can I get a motion to approve an amended agenda? Very simple one, we're just going to move executive session behind, or right ahead of communications from the public.
Make a motion to approve an amended agenda, moving executive session just before communications from the public.
Second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Make a motion to approve the waive council pay for the special meeting.
Make a motion to approve waiving the council pay for the special meeting this evening.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. And can I get a motion to go into executive session?
Make a motion to go into executive session in accordance with South Dakota Codified Law 1-25-2-3 legal.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
Yes.
Pardon? All right, so we were almost, we were close to being done discussing the budget for 2025. What I handed out to each of you, Bob, Wynn, and Doug, the health department heads, and nothing all what council had was considering for their budgets. And he only had one individual that didn't push back, but wanted to advocate for an item in their budget, and that's based on the wastewater. I provided his email to you about why he feels the skid steer, he still feels that's important to have in his budget. His reasoning is there for you. And then Chief Norton forwarded me an email. The Kansas Highway Patrol reached out to him about picking up one of their used vehicles. If you remember, we talked about used vehicles in Kansas last year. And because of the bad experience we had with the one from Florida, we weren't anxious about used vehicles anymore. Bob's not able to join us. He has a personal issue that he's dealing with. He said that Belle Fourche has purchased used patrol vehicles from Belle Fourche from Kansas, and they've been very satisfied with them. So I just wanted to provide those emails to you so that you're making your decisions with all the information that was provided to me.
This patrol vehicle proposed, isn't that a 2024 expense? This topic of discussion be for 2024?
It probably would be because
We're not gonna
it's,
hold it.
yeah, they're, Yeah,
this
it's
would
available
affect their
now.
2025
This
budget.
would not be a part of the 2025 line items, no.
So I asked him about that, whether there would be one available in 2025. He said they are replacing their fleet every year, so his expectation is yes, there would be a vehicle available in 2025. It's still throw a dart and hope it sticks.
Well, what I liked about this is it said that it is fully upfitted and there would be an additional cost for the radio, and I think that outfitting a brand new vehicle is with their what, shrink wrap package or whatever you call that.
It'd still
can
have
get
to do
pricey.
that, it wouldn't have our
Oh,
logos and
that's
stuff
right, it
on it,
wouldn't have
it'd
our
still have
logo.
those expenses.
$35.
No, it's way more than that.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
6,500?
Oh, just the wrap is
Just
what
the
it's
wrap. To equip them is about the cost of,
Of the vehicle?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, what I,
stuff.
yeah, what I saw here was, it would have the lights and the grill guards,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Everything except
Our logo.
a radio.
Uh-huh.
We took the car out of the 2025 budget, right?
Took the car
Yeah.
out, and there's still a discussion about the additional officer.
Or we could take the officer out and give them the cheaper vehicle option.
The more value priced vehicle.
Well, in my eyes, I thought that this was coming out of this budget now.
Right.
And not have them hold that till 2025's budget. Because I don't know if they could hold the vehicle
Right.
for 2025's budget.
Yeah, because I don't think they want
And I
to.
wouldn't want to appropriate now 2025 money, spending it now for
You can't,
that. You can't
it's
do
not
that,
possible.
so.
Do we have the money?
Not in their current
Anywhere.
budget.
Yeah, we don't.
It's not in their current.
But in my mind, it was out to begin with at $88,000. Again, I asked the chief, do you expect there to be one next year? He said they turn their fleet over regularly, so he wouldn't be at all surprised if there would be one. If you budget for a used one for next year, the money's there. If it doesn't come about, it doesn't come about. He wasn't gonna get a new one at $88,000. At least budgeting this amount, if one becomes available, there would be the money there for it.
Or we could take this one this year, right? Or is that not being discussed?
Well, I just understood someone to say that there isn't any money in the budget for this one this year.
They don't have it in their current budget, but you often appropriate additional dollars to budgets. And I didn't say that that's not possible.
That's what I was asking.
You see the cash balances. It's possible the day you might pay for it tomorrow.
so if this one is still available, we would supplementally appropriate from unassigned cash balance, which we just whacked over the head with the.
With
And
what?
we have about 350,000 in this budget still that we're using that for. But there is currently enough funds to do that. That's a decision that you get to make.
Well, to the mayor's point, I mean, we did have that bad experience with that vehicle coming out of Florida. I mean, I'm just, you know.
Yeah, that was a different organization. That was
Just a salesman,
a
just a used car
true
salesman.
used car. I think Kansas State controls.
What Bob said, Bill Fuchs has done is actually send the chief of police down to take a look at the fleet personally, fly them down, and then if they pick up a vehicle, they drive it back.
So let me see if I can get this right, perhaps in my little peek ahead here. So we're looking at a $35,000 vehicle possibly to, add to our fleet for this year. There is appropriated funds available that we can do that this year. And then next year, would we not consider a new vehicle?
And if someone else wasn't in line after our refusal, someone else might be in line for
So we would
next
get
year's.
this one this year to supplement what they're asking for on the 2025 budget.
No, this would be a
This would be
2024
for
expenditure.
2024.
And
Right.
so
And they get no vehicle in 2025.
Because you already took that off.
So I provided the email for you, not for a purchase this year, but to replace the $88,000 vehicle in 2025. Now, but if you're more comfortable getting it, that's what you're told me.
It kind of comes out of the same pot, whether we have this year or hope for one next year. Am I right?
We're currently in the hole 350, so yeah, we added it in for next year, we're just going a hole further.
Well, when I spoke with the chief, I got the impression that they could get by without having a new vehicle next year. That was the impression I got. And so we took that out of the budget. Now we come back and, okay, I can't have a new one for next year, but how about if I get a used one this year? What's wrong with what you have right now? Why are we,
They're aging, and they age out.
and $35,000, I'm not a, you know, for a 2022 Dodge Durango, that seems like a lot.
50,000 miles.
Dodge Durango to me.
We stepped at the cost of wrapping it, if we flew the chief to Kansas to pick it up, his salary, wages, travel. So there's more than just the 35.
Anyway, just throw that out.
When I got the email from the chief, I may have misunderstood his intent. I did not read it to mean he was asking for a vehicle yet this year. That he was suggesting this is a replacement for the 88,000, the vehicle next year, that didn't get approved.
I think it reads like it's available now, and I don't know what might be available next
I
year.
think this is our chance now, we need to grab this good deal.
Yeah,
because it may not be
notified
available
this
again.
morning that they have this vehicle.
But if he said I can get by without a new one next year, do we need to latch onto this? Because this appears to be a good deal. That's the question, in my opinion.
And if we had all the money that we needed to run the city, we should be replacing a vehicle every year. Because by the time 8 vehicles rotates around, they have way more miles. You know, our vehicles have, I don't know how much mileage on them, they get a lot. So, they didn't get a new vehicle this year. We got the Lemon last year.
We replaced that too. We used the insurance money for the hail damage to buy a new vehicle
Okay.
and not repair our existing fleet.
We were able to use the engine out of the Lemon, right? We put that in our old one.
We got a new, we gave,
Well, let's just muddy this water a
Yeah, you
little
can't
more.
remember because it was so convoluted.
So,
Well, the engine was part of the problem last time.
we put a new engine in the
Right.
16 Charger because we sold the Lemon to Hills Auto.
There we go.
The swap was, we'll provide
For
you a
that
new
engine.
engine for that 16 Charger.
so how, you know, the question is, how many miles is our oldest vehicle sitting with right now?
It's probably the 2014 Explorer.
It's a 10-year-old vehicle. Should have been swapped out 2 years ago.
It was used by the chief very little in the first several years. Mike barely used it, kept it in good condition.
How many miles it's got on it, we don't know. And then we have a Bobcat that's 31 years old. Being asked for too. We've got some old equipment sitting here that needs replaced.
this year, or is that to replace the vehicle next year? That didn't get approved.
I'm making sure. Well, I think even wastewater, hopefully, other than this old one. Yeah, I think so.
So you're saying there's one that we have that they can share?
Yes, any department should be able to share anything any other departments, but I'm saying I think they have another one besides this one that's been purchased before 31 years ago.
So what
And maybe I
is more
have
recent?
Bobcat, or
Maybe
maybe have
maybe
water,
it's water.
but water and wastewater share equipment.
So that was my question to, do you expect there'll be, these vehicles next year, they're turning
I
fleet
think we
over
should
every
talk
year?
about one at a time,
Yeah.
because one is the wastewater fund and one is the
Okay.
general fund, so. We left
Uh-huh.
$66,000 in wastewater as additional revenue to add back to their savings, so if you wanted to do.
Okay.
The price dropped from 65, they were asking for it at 50, if you
All right.
read the email.
Thank you.
So they, we shut that separately because they have the funds, we're not putting anything back into their savings, and you can see how it's depleted this year, but.
So the chief said he'd be tickled pink if you get him one now because it's available, but he fully expects that there will be the same option available to him next year. Because we hadn't purchased a vehicle in a couple of years, they took us off of the list, letting us know they were available. But he expects the one will be available next year. The idea of the 35 or whatever amount you're supposed to set aside, if the money's there, when a vehicle becomes available, and we could give them a call and say, hey, we got one for you, at the top of our list, do you want it? That the money is there, sitting, ready to be used. So if you want to purchase it for him this year, you'd be tickled pink to have it. But as you discussed, it's coming from the same pot, whether it comes in 2024 or 2025.
And we have to be more realistic, because it's not gonna be 35,175.
You can probably just round that up to 40,000 between. Or closer to 50. I think 40's closer between, because a wrap is about 2,000.
Well, if they go down to get it, then,
Yeah, and titling and insurance, I think 40 sounds reasonable.
Radio wrap and
how that would be.
the concern, I think we're sharing some vehicles now, which means we're working them harder than you would normally. Normally you're working or driving a vehicle 10 or 12 hours a day, 3 or 4 days a week, and now if officers are sharing vehicles, we're abusing them. I don't mean that bad, but we're working them harder than normal, so we're wearing them out. That would be the only reason I would say we should consider this, whether we do this one or put 40,000 back in the PD budget for next year, because what we don't want to do is get into a domino where we lose a vehicle because of maintenance issues, and now we're working our remaining fleet even harder, and we just cascade our problems.
Well, and I agree with that, Bill, because, we were trying to get our aging fleet up to speed with everything else that we're working on the police department.
Because right now, we've got a 14 Explorer, a 16 Charger, a 19 Charger, a 20 Durango, 21 Durango, 22 Durango, 23 Durango, and whatever the pickup is.
And the Durango's been serving us well,
Yep,
maintenance-wise.
yep, I mean, it's,
If we don't recommend it things, or people don't recommend us.
yeah. Yeah,
We can get the warranty or
Adam
whatever.
doesn't like Dodges, but nothing else has been available from the,
I see a lot of police forces are using
yeah, it's either gonna be,
Dodges.
Ford or a Dodge, and South Dakota hasn't really had Fords available to them, so.
Well, here's something to throw out. We've bent over backwards building our police department. Fully staffed, and we've been giving them all the bells and whistles of the upgraded weaponry and training, and, I mean, we've got a really good thing going right now, and I think we should be able to rest our laurels for a year and let them function the way they're functioning now. So I would like to throw out maybe giving up that position and updating a car. Just throwing that out there. Because it's coming down to one or the other or nothing. Because we still have $300,000 worth in the red.
You had 345, 345, you had 50. You're up to 395.
Yeah.
So I haven't talked about the skid steer.
That's a different fund, though. That's in wastewater, and they have cash available in the 2025 budget. But I, again, urge caution, because when things break in water and wastewater, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we have depleted the reserves in those funds. So we were gonna put 66,000 back into the bank in this budget, but you have 50,000 for a skid steer if you wanted to in the 2025 budget. And the,
She was also saying that there's another skid steer that they could be sharing with another department.
We have at least 3 skid steers that are just as old as that one between other departments.
But they're all
So-
31 years old.
But they're functioning as far as we know.
So to Deborah's point, we need to get the police department resolved.
I would share concern without knowing what's gonna happen with IM 28 and knowing that you have other increases coming in 2026 that we can't afford in 2025 and are gonna be even higher. Is this the right time to add an ongoing increasing expense in a new FTE when you may be doing cutback budgeting to the tune of 500,000 or more next year?
Can I put some numbers to that? And I know sometimes my calculations make you nervous. But it supports what you're saying, is using your finance report, and this I think was for the end of June, we could potentially end up this year with a little over 3.6 million in general fund. So if we add our not quite $4 million of estimated revenue for 25 with, and then figure in about not quite 4.3 million in expenses. And then what I've done is, if IM 28 impacts us by, and I conservatively said 500,000 a year. So I worked it through 26, estimating revenue and growing expenses, because revenue gets hit in the mouth, expenses grow. But at the end of 26, we could potentially end up in general fund $2,170,000.
Are you taking out money for the sidewalk?
Yes.
Thank
If you say,
you.
and this is just me talking, we need about 6 months or about $2 million as a reserve for unknowns. That would say at the end of 2026, we got about $170,000 in the bank that we could spend. And you heard me plead the case I think we do need another officer, but I don't think it would be, I would rather spend the overtime and cover our needs with overtime than hire somebody in a year from now saying, oh, sorry, Gary, we can't afford you, you're now terminated. That's not, I don't think that's gonna help our recruitment or our retention. You know, my support of the PD isn't lessened at all, but there's too many unknowns that we're trying to manage right now, and adding another FTE is, you know, like we said in the previous meetings, if IM 28 hits us, or even normal life hits us, you can't cut enough post-it notes and signs and pencils and cut back on propane usage to cover us. So I tend to agree with Deb that this isn't the year to add the body. And I hate that because I think we need it. The stuff those guys are facing out on the street, we need another body, but I don't think we can pay for it.
Well, and I'm a very strong advocate for the police department, as everybody knows. And I feel they need that body as well. However, this IM 28, the setbacks that we're looking at with what we have to cut for the budget for 2025, I financially cannot sit here and say, it's a good deal, let's go ahead with it. I have to now say, I cannot support the extra position, and I cannot support the new police vehicle. We have to think hard in how we're going to try to make this unknown IM 28. Surely I would hope that the state would not let smaller communities like us that heavily rely on that income to come into the city and have it taken away now. How are we gonna operate? Are we gonna have to fold? Are we gonna have to let people go? I can't see that happening. I don't want that to happen. But with the unknown, I'm sorry, but we have to look at reality. What we can and cannot afford. I support you, Bill, with what you're saying and your figures. And I've taken a hard look at this over the past few days since we started our budget and this IM 28. And I'm sad to say, I can't support the position.
Well, I've said that, thought about this. I agree with what you're saying, Bill, because I am thinking coming up, you know, you speak more eloquently than I do, so I support what you're saying. I'll just put it that way, okay?
I'm not sure how you got to those figures, but even without IM 28, if you add back in that 500,000, that doesn't put us very high in 2026 either. So remember this feeling as you're considering and discussing and even just looking at the claims that come through, because we can't keep doing the things that we've been choosing to do unless some new source of revenue becomes available to us, much less lose one.
Was there agreement that the
Well, I think,
additional officer is out,
The what?
additional officer is out?
whether I like it or not personally, I'd have to agree with what Mayor JR and Bill saying. This makes business sense.
Are you
So
going
you've got
to do
2, 3,
Yeah,
4, 5.
you lit that fuse.
Threw it out there,
So would you like me to start taking those out and seeing where we're at?
much as I don't want to.
So if you remember, the way I added that into the Excel spreadsheets that you have is so that you could just go into the projected dollar amount and see the calculation. It has $1 and then it has plus, so the very first ones, and if you don't wanna update your spreadsheets, that's fine, because I'm gonna send you out completed ones anyway. But I'm gonna be taking out, from salaries and wages, $67,150, from payroll taxes, $5,140, from retirement, $5,372, from retirement, $945, I'm sorry, from workers' comp, $945. From group insurance, $12,000. From unemployment, $125. From services and fees, $168. From supplies, $500. From clothing and equipment, $1,350. From cell phone, $445 and $505 for a total of $950. From machinery and equipment, $500. And $66 from computer software. Bringing the new total for the police department down to $993,991. Would you like me to give you an update on the total general fund deficit after that change? Or would you like to talk about adding a vehicle for 2024 or 2025 before I do that?
Let's talk about that.
Is it better to wait and see and just supplementally appropriate, or is it better to budget so that if something becomes available and the need is there, that
I think if the need is there and you have the ability to address it now should be the time. If it's something I just want, there are lots of other departments that wanted things too, that we cut out. So either one is gonna take from our unassigned fund balance, so I don't really care which way you do it. But if the need is there, I believe that we should be addressing our needs first before those of other organizations and groups.
Well, one thing I was wondering, you know, he said our name came to the top of the list now. So will our name even come to the top of the list next year, or will it be the year after? It depends on how many other police departments or law enforcement agencies are throwing their name into the hat for one of these vehicles.
Well, if there's a possibility we have the funding, I would say get it now
Yeah,
from Kansas. I would say get that bid.
yeah, because there's no guarantee that that we will even come up to the top of the list next year.
And if we're showing good faith by purchasing a vehicle from them, we should have an option next year.
Or the year after.
Yeah, or the year after, because we wouldn't be budgeting for it for
Next year,
2025
no.
if we do it
Exactly.
now.
Yeah.
So, I agree with you.
So if I don't add that to this budget, we continue a discussion for 2024 for the vehicle if necessary, then we are at $251,079 as a projected loss in the general fund in 2025.
But we had the discussion of the skid steer.
Well, that's wastewater.
Oh, you said that they had that money.
Yep, when we're done with this one, when we go to that one, we can look at where we ended up with our discussion and what we cut, and I'll show you how they can squeeze that into their 2025 budget, but that fund and the water fund are both close to being over their budget for this year already. And we still have several months left of the year to pay for, so they're gonna be tapping out their cash reserves, which are under 500,000 for the water fund and right over 500,000 right now in wastewater.
Tracy says we're pretty much done with the water project
Wait till you
part.
see your agenda for Monday night. There's 3 more expenses that are unbudgeted and unplanned that they're asking for money for. So done with the project doesn't stop, done with needing things in that fund. That's one project. But they would have, when we get there, they would have the funds in the 2025 budget to put that back in. these are 2025 budget discussions. If we're not gonna do it in 2025, let's talk about that in public safety or admin finance or at the next council meeting. Because you don't have to make that decision here tonight, if we're planning on doing it in 2024.
I think that's the best way to do it, then.
The feeling of the council is you want to purchase it, you just want to do it from 24 budget.
It's available now. It's a good price. We've got people sharing a vehicle.
But I have a question.
Yeah, are we gonna trade off a vehicle since they have 8 for 8 officers right now? Is there one that we'd be trading off to get this one, or are we gonna keep 9?
My guess is the Explorer could be either surplus or there's another department.
Recycle?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just had a question. Would it be the chief of police be the correct person to send down there and look at this vehicle? Or should we be sending the city mechanic down to look at the worthiness of this vehicle?
Well, I think that's a discussion for one of the.
Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah.
I would agree.
I mean, I just wanted to throw it out there.
Who goes? We'll add that to the topic of discussion. I think in the Florida one, we had our city mechanic on the phone while they did a walkthrough, while the mechanic at the dealership did a walkthrough. That didn't work out very good, so. Is there anything else we want to revisit in the general fund? Hearing no comments, I'm gonna,
What did we get it down to? Was
251,079.
hasn't been that low in a while, as far as the supplemental appropriation.
I'm gonna move on to wastewater. If you guys wanna jump over there with me, if you remember, it's towards the left on your spreadsheet. It's the Fund 604. Wastewater fund, and then in our printed out budget worksheets, it's gonna be on page 35. Original request was dropped down after our budget cuts to 828, 856 in expenses. The projected revenue is 895,000. So the projected profit for 2025 in the wastewater fund was 66,144. The email that the mayor tossed out at the beginning of the meeting has a lot of info, and I haven't read it all, but I got that. They could drop it down to 50,000 and trade in the machine, so instead of 65 for the skid steer, it looks like they're looking for 50. That would leave $16,144 in the wastewater fund if you added that back in. And if you remember, that was on line 36, machinery and equipment 434. We cut that one down to 140, we put it up to 190 if you approve the skid steer. Thoughts?
We talk more about the ability to share.
They're old too, but we have at least three others between
They're all
streets and water.
30 years old too. This one sounds like it's should be used for parts.
Yeah, this one doesn't, from the description of the issues, it can only move forward with one joystick, not both. It only has 1 gear.
Yeah, it sounds pretty dire.
How
has
are
an
we
open
not getting
cache.
this fixed?
What?
How are we not getting these repaired when they're coming up with?
Well, I
I
do
mean,
think that
that's a
we've had
safety
bobcat
issue alone.
repairs.
Yeah, they're 31 years old, they probably don't have the parts for them anymore.
I think we should have been addressed, I mean, it's a safety issue.
So is your vote to add it at 50,000 to
Absolutely.
have the budget?
That's my vote
Risk
too.
having anybody get hurt.
Then if anybody needs to use one, we volunteer the new one.
Yeah,
Well,
There's
I
breaks
think
down.
our department should be willing to share the equipment. And
They do, I know they do
I
already,
mean,
so.
I don't mean to be nitpicking, but, you know, this last week I went over what we've been paying out and stuff, and I thought, how many hoses do we need to pay for? I took it to be all water hoses, you know, I mean, I don't mean to be looking over their shoulders and stuff, but when these expenditures come to us at every meeting, you know, and I thought, it kind of looks to me like they all need to get together and they need to do a revamp of their shops, and so they know where their equipment's at, instead of running down to the hardware store and buying something new because they can't find it.
Are they buying it new because they can't find it, or are they buying it new because what they have doesn't work anymore?
Probably a little bit of both.
That could be a little bit.
And I found downstairs in City Hall as we're preparing for the surplus auction, a metal hose rack hanger, metal hose hanger. In the same batch of claims where you approved wastewater, bought hoses and metal hose hangers. Well, I don't need it, we didn't need it downstairs at City Hall. But if you've ever been down there, it's not regularly visited, so we probably have a little bit of both. And I think that we have some work we can do in department head meetings to start, you know, sharing our financial position and trying to get a little more.
Yeah, conducting an inventory to see what's where in each building or different
And
shop.
limiting our visits to the hardware store for things that we have somewhere else.
So is machinery and equipment up to 190 now?
I haven't changed it, but that's the consensus I'm getting unless I hear an objection.
Wastewater's not great about putting what piece of equipment things before, so none of these say wastewater sinks.
I asked her to look how much money we put in the Bobcat in the last couple of years, because that's the other thing we do is spend a lot of money on crap stuff. And then we say it's crap, and it still is crap, but we spent thousands of dollars on crap in the last year. But it's hard to tell with their purchases because they're not putting the code of the vehicle on what's being purchased. So I hear no objections. I'm changing machinery and equipment to 190. I'm changing the notes for the, what we're purchasing to leave the skid steer back in there, but I'm changing the dollar amount from 65 to 50. And I'll put with trade-in. And then the only thing we're not getting is the two-man scissor left. That change then brings the wastewater total to 878, 856. And again, if you don't want to update your spreadsheets, we're pretty close to the end. I'll be sending out updated ones. And then that puts additional $16,144 in a projected profit for 2025 for the wastewater fund,
That was 878 what?
856. Those are the only two things we had left? We're finalizing the packets for Monday night, and we'll have packets ready Friday noon. Should I add the idea of this vehicle on that agenda, or wait one more to discuss it at public safety or somewhere else?
Police vehicle?
I would say, given how these are typically very short fused, I would suggest go ahead and put it on Monday night's agenda.
Okay. Anybody have any objections to that?
back to what Linda had mentioned, I went through it real quick on the, just stuff going to Ace Hardware.
Yeah.
And there were like 3 or 4 things just for metal tape. Different days, people run down and get more tape for.
I mean,
It's okay to ask questions, so as you see those before the meeting, send me an email, I'll ask the department heads, they're used to it, they'll answer the questions and we'll know before you approve the claims. If you ask during the meeting, I might not have an answer.
No,
It's still okay to ask then, it's okay to ask anytime before you approve the claims. After they're approved,
No, that was going to the point of having everybody know what's in a particular shop and to go down there and get it instead of running to Ace.
I will say that at one time, we tried to have a checkout list at the maintenance shop, because that's where the majority of the equipment is held. And they got real frustrated because their stuff was disappearing and no one was writing who was taking it. So you do have those issues, and that's just gonna be a management and a case-by-case thing we have to work through. We don't wanna tell everybody from everywhere they can just go get what they need from the maintenance shop, because then they don't have what they bought and they need. But they're good points, and we wanna share, and we wanna make sure we utilize what we have first before we spend money on new stuff. And then we gotta think, do we need trees and flowers at our wastewater treatment plant? Sure, it looks nice, but who's going there? Who's gonna see it? Those are some expenses that we've seen this year, while we're concerned with the decrease in cash balance, that have really made us think, why are we doing this? What are we buying this, why are we buying trees and hoses and flowers and retaining rock?
I think what we need to do is have our department head meetings, maybe even, and continue on a standing item of, be ever mindful of our budget, be ever mindful of what you're spending. Make sure you know where your stuff is.
Don't spend it just because you can.
There's a loss there. So
We just need to
make
supply
sure
our
that's part of the
E5.
No.
the communications with the
Yeah,
department heads.
agree.
I mean, granted, where I'm at, I'm the only one that uses the equipment, but I've used the same shovel for the last 5 years. I did have to break down and buy a new broom because I broke the handle on their broom, so I had
Yeah, but those campers deserve it.
to. Oh, okay.
Probably.
Yeah, I needed that broom to sweep out them toilets. Yeah. Okay.
So we're not looking to find $251,000 somewhere else to cut.
I mean, you sure can if you want, I'm just not sure where you'd find it.
Just verifying before we call it into this.
You've been through the budget.
I know, where would we look is the next question. Because I think we went as far as we could on everything.
Our budgets versus our actuals the actuals have been a little better story than our projected shortfalls. When you look at the actual numbers, but we've moved so much money around, it's hard to say, oh, we did great,
And we
because,
got insurance monies and, yeah, those kind of things are one-time things,
Yeah.
so.
And I think also when, the last 3 years, the golf course and the plunge have not needed their funds, so that.
But we've been spending those additional dollars on other things. You appropriated those things for other purposes,
I
so.
know, but what I'm saying is, should we not have to pay them this year, that would make up for that $251,000
well,
essentially.
but if you remember last meeting, what I suggested is if we don't utilize those subsidies, that we, as best we can, earmark that for the runway rebuild in 2031, because that's gonna be a $450,000 to $500,000 expense hit to the 202.
I would say with the golf course HVAC improvements and retaining wall repairs, that I would be surprised if they're not using their subsidy in Evans Plunge as well for this year so far. So it's hard to say where we're gonna end at the end of the year.
I just, you know.
That's why I don't like to project out to 2026 for you guys
Yeah.
like he does, but if he's willing to do it, he can.
Yeah,
How are your grant writing skills?
slightly less robust than my budgeting skills.
We pay for services like those council local governments is really good at grant writing, so, and we already paid to be part of that. They do a
Let's
good
make sure
job.
we utilize them. to
And
their
Bob
fullest.
Nelson Jr.'s been doing a good job for some city hall repair stuff and other smaller things, so we you read our 2023 recaps, all the grant dollars that we were able to get for the year, and we'll keep doing that, because that's the only way we're gonna make it through these big projects that are still on the horizon.
So what do we wanna do? We want to say yay, nay, we're done, we wanna keep going on, what do we wanna do?
My understanding of where we're at as far as what's gonna be coming out of savings, we got it down to 245, and then $50,000 for a police vehicle.
251,079 is where I'm at.
So we're looking at right around $300,000 coming out of savings. Between what we budgeted last year and what we'll be asked to approve for a police vehicle. 2019. We started at 345. We're down to 3.
That's in the general fund. Our 212 fund, we're projecting $481,947,000 as a loss. I think that's the only other real significant loss. Water is projecting a $5,000 loss. Wastewater, a small increase. Solid waste, a small increase. Of course, we know the subsidies in the golf course and the fund, so $165,532 in the golf course projected loss, and $286,785 in the fund projected loss.
Do we have to do something with the water fund to balance their budget?
They're cash, they can apply
Okay.
currently.
Until Monday night, they got this.
Can't promise at the end of the year we don't know.
Okay.
Can you just summarize for us one more time?
Sure. The general fund is projecting $251,079 loss. That's including all the departments in the general fund. Our 211 fund, we're projecting to spend all of the revenue, so we're at a zero comparing revenue to expenses. Our additional sales tax, or 212 fund, we're projecting a $481,947 loss.
And so that's where we're not going to be taking the loan, we're taking it out of our savings.
But we didn't budget for that. That'll happen this year. We'll have to pay those expenses for the sidewalk this year. This is projecting next year. And our projections for revenue compared to expenses have a $481,947 loss.
And the reason, or the big hits on that are the Dip Bridge borings, the Minnetonka Bridge replacement,
That's a big one.
and the
The
subsidies.
Yep. The bid fund, 213, we're projecting to spend all the revenue we collect. The 501 capital improvement fund, we don't get any revenue, and hopefully the sidewalk project is done, so we're not projecting any revenue or expenses. The water fund, we're projecting a $5,057 loss. The wastewater fund, we're projecting a $16,144 profit. Solid waste fund, we're projecting a $15,150 profit. The golf course fund without their subsidy is projecting a $165,532 loss. But with the subsidy, we're projecting a zero, we're spending as much as we take in. And the Evans Plunge Fund, we're projecting a loss of $286,785. But with the subsidy, then we're projecting zero, or balancing. And then in our 701 Cemetery Perpetual Care Fund, we are projecting $15,000 being spent from our perpetual care reserves. Yay!
Any questions, anyone?
I'll work on getting these new numbers input into both fund accounting and the Excel spreadsheets, and then I'll distribute the data to you, and then get it to all the department heads, and then also work on the 2025 appropriation ordinance, which has its first reading, the first meeting in September.
That was gonna be my question, so then the second reading will be the 16th.
And hopefully, there are no changes between the first and the second, because they're statutory deadlines, so speak now with our culture piece.
All right,
Thank you for
thank you, everyone.
preparing us so what I'm gonna see.
Thank you, Ms.
You're
Steve.
welcome. I said you're welcome before you even said thank you today, but you are welcome.
Please, your crystal ball's still cloudy. but that's
Yeah,
okay.
it is, you're right.
But it is, I mean, the decisions are hard, but it's not because of the lack of information, and so thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ariel.
Take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
What time do you have, Nancy?